There is a specific kind of person who looks at a get-rich-quick scheme and thinks this is it. This is the one. This is where it all turns around. History has given us stockbrokers, snake oil salesmen, pyramid architects, and men who genuinely believed they had cracked the code on free money. And then it has given us something even better, the ones who tried to run the scam and collided, at full velocity, with the oldest investor in the room, reality. Reality, for the record, charges compound interest and never loses. Today we have 10 of the most spectacularly self-defeating operators who ever tried to take the shortcut and ended up taking the only exit. These are not victims of bad luck. These are architects of their own magnificently bad decisions. And they executed those decisions with a commitment that, honestly, almost deserves a standing ovation. Fair warning. Number 6 broke 3 members of our research team and sent one of them to lie down in a darkened room. We are not exaggerating. We checked. Number 1. Lagos, Nigeria, 2019. The air smells like diesel and ambition, and the specific kind of optimism that only exists in people who have never actually lost money before. A man named Emmanuel, 31 years old, former bank teller, owner of a phenomenal collection of Agbada, and the unshakable belief that he was the smartest person in any room he entered, had recently pivoted careers. He was now an advanced fee fraudster, a 419 man, the old craft practiced by thousands, perfected by almost none. Emmanuel had been at it for 8 months, which is exactly long enough to think you understand it, and exactly short enough to have never met the thing that kills you. His angle was elegant, he thought. Simple. He would impersonate a Central Bank of Nigeria official and send letters to foreign businessmen explaining that a sum of $14.7 million in unclaimed petroleum revenues was locked in a regulatory escrow account. All that was needed to release the funds was a processing fee of $4,800, wired to a third-party clearing account in Belgium. The account was Emmanuel's cousin's PayPal. Emmanuel was almost certainly thinking this was the beginning of a beautiful era of financial independence. He had a spreadsheet. He had 17 active targets. He had a specific vision of the Lexus he was going to buy. Here is the thing about advance fee fraud that Emmanuel had not fully internalized. The people most attracted to a scheme promising millions of dollars for a small upfront fee are not, statistically speaking, the people with the strongest grip on reality. And when you fish for marks in that particular pond long enough, eventually you pull up something that was also fishing. What Emmanuel did not know, could not have known, could perhaps have guessed if he had thought about it for more than 6 consecutive seconds, was that one of his 17 targets, a man named Gerald in Pretoria, South Africa, was also running a scam. Gerald's scam was simpler and considerably more violent. He had associates. Emmanuel had a cousin in Belgium with PayPal. Gerald did not wire $4,800 to a clearing account. Gerald flew to Lagos with 2 men and a very specific set of questions. Witnesses later confirmed that the meeting took place in a rented office space in Victoria Island, that Emmanuel had hired specifically to look like a regulatory environment. It had a photocopied government seal taped to the wall. It had an official-looking desk. It had Emmanuel, who discovered, at a very precise moment in the conversation, that he had successfully recruited the wrong kind of investor. Emmanuel exited the business permanently. The Lexus was never purchased. Gerald and his associates were later detained but not convicted. The photocopied seal was entered into evidence and described in the police report as of notably poor print quality. He built a trap and walked directly into it from the other direction. The universe, which has a deep appreciation for structural irony, was delighted. That one died at the intersection of overconfidence and the universe's single greatest punchline. Number 2 operated at a slightly more technical level, which, as it turns out, did not help him at all. Number 2. The year is 2021. The location is a spare bedroom in a semi-detached house in Wolverhampton, England, decorated with motivational posters and 3 monitors, which is the universal aesthetic of a man who has convinced himself he is building something. His name was Darren. Darren was 38 years old, former IT support technician, current operator of what he described to his brother-in-law as a cryptocurrency arbitrage consultancy, which was in practice a Ponzi scheme targeting retired schoolteachers in the West Midlands. He had 41 investors. He had collected $287,000. He had a spreadsheet that he was genuinely proud of. Now, a brief word about Ponzi schemes and the physics of their collapse, because this matters. A Ponzi scheme is not a sustainable financial instrument. It is a structural defect that looks exactly like a financial instrument until the precise moment it does not. The mathematics are not ambiguous. Every pound that enters the scheme as a promised return must be sourced from a new pound entering as a new investment. The moment inflows slow, not stop. Slow, the scheme enters what financial investigators later describe as terminal velocity toward inevitable collapse. In Darren's specific case, he was paying an 18% monthly return on a $287,000, which required the $51.60 per month in new investment just to stand still. He was recruiting an average of 3 new investors per month. 3 retired school teachers averaging $4,200 each. That is a $12,600 per month against a $51,660 per month liability. I am not making this up, we double-checked the numbers. Darren was aware of the gap. Darren's solution to the gap was to open a second layer of the scheme targeting investors in the first scheme, offering them a premium tier with a 26% monthly return. This is roughly the financial equivalent of trying to put out a grease fire by adding more grease, except that the grease is other people's retirement savings and the fire is felony fraud. What Darren had not modeled, not on any of his 3 monitors, not on his beloved spreadsheet, was the specific behavior of retired school teachers who have been defrauded. It turns out they talk to each other. It turns out they have a WhatsApp group. It turns out they include, among their number, one Margaret, 67 years old, former head of mathematics at a comprehensive school in Dudley, who looked at Darren's pitch document and identified 14 mathematical impossibilities in 45 minutes. Margaret forwarded her analysis to 12 people in action fraud simultaneously. Real talk for 30 seconds. If someone is offering you monthly returns above 5%, the question is not, how much should I invest? The question is, what is the mechanism? If the mechanism is not clearly explainable in one sentence, the mechanism is you. That is the whole lesson. Moving on. Investigators arrived at the 3-monitor spare bedroom 14 days after Margaret's email. Darren was arrested while editing his spreadsheet. He was later sentenced to 4 years and 8 months. Margaret received a commendation from the local police. The motivational posters were photographed as part of the evidence file. One of them read, "Success is a choice." The investigators noted this with what the court transcript describes as visible amusement. Darren spent 4 years building something that Margaret dismantled in 45 minutes. This is the gap between confidence and competence, and it is exactly 25 minutes wide. If Darren had a plan, number 3 had a vision. The distinction, as you are about to discover, is entirely cosmetic. Number 3, Bogota, Colombia, 2017. There is a specific type of man who stands at the front of a conference room with a laser pointer and makes everything sound inevitable. He speaks in percentages. He uses the word ecosystem. He has a slide deck with a gradient background and a logo that involved professional design work. His name, and this is real, we verified it, was Roberto Millan, and he was explaining to 63 assembled investors that his company, Fintech Solutions Latinoamerica SA, had developed a proprietary algorithm that used satellite weather data to predict commodity price movements with an 89.3% accuracy rate. The 0.7% imprecision, Roberto explained, was essentially a rounding error. Essentially. Let's discuss what an 89.3% accurate commodity trading algorithm would actually be worth, for a moment, because this is important. The most sophisticated quantitative trading operations on Earth, firms with billions in assets, PhDs from MIT doing nothing but this full-time, typically operate on prediction accuracy in the low to mid-50s. A 55% accurate model in commodities trading is worth billions of dollars. An 89.3% accurate model would be worth, conservatively, more than the GDP of several medium-sized nations. Roberto was offering access to this system for an initial investment of a $15,000 USD per participant. Stay with me. Roberto did not have an algorithm. Roberto had a laptop, a finance degree from a university that no one in the room had heard of, and a nephew who did something with computers, and had set up a dashboard that displayed numbers that changed every few seconds and looked, to the untrained eye, like trading software. The numbers were generated by a random number function the nephew had written in approximately 40 minutes. The nephew later told investigators he thought it was for a demo. He was not charged. Roberto collected $847,000 over 11 months before an investor named Camila, 44 years old, civil engineer, owner of a deeply inconvenient habit of asking specific questions, requested an independent audit of the trading records. Roberto provided the audit. He had prepared it himself, in Microsoft Word, over a long weekend. Camila, who regularly reviewed structural load calculations for a living, identified the document as fabricated in approximately the time it takes to read the first page. She did not invest a second dollar. She called her attorney. The attorney called a regulator. The regulator called 11 other regulators. Roberto was arrested at El Dorado International Airport in possession of 2 suitcases, a one-way ticket to Panama, and a laptop containing the algorithm, which forensic investigators described in their report as a JavaScript file totaling 23 lines of code, the bulk of which consisted of comments explaining how to use it. He was sentenced to 6 years. The nephew sent flowers to the prosecution. Roberto had a satellite. Camila had a first page. Guess which one mattered? Number 4 gave us the rarest thing in this entire genre. A scammer who was defeated entirely by the physical world refusing to cooperate with the narrative he had constructed around it. Number 4. Outside Phoenix, Arizona. Summer, 2018. The temperature on the day in question was 109 degrees Fahrenheit. This detail is not atmospheric. This detail is load-bearing. A man named Curtis, 52 years old, former insurance adjuster, current motivational speaker and wealth coach whose seminars cost Furs $200 per seat, had developed a very specific product. He called it the Desert Abundance Immersion. It was a 3-day retreat in the Arizona desert, during which participants would confront their mental blocks around wealth, realign their financial mindset, and literally walk, across a bed of hot coals on the final evening as a symbol of transcending limitation. 41 people had paid Furs $200 each. Curtis had collected 49th $200. Curtis had not, in any meaningful sense, organized a firewalk before. Firewalking, when done correctly by people who understand the relevant thermodynamics, relies on a specific property of wood ash. Wood ash is an extraordinarily poor thermal conductor. This means that the surface layer of ash insulating the coals beneath transfers heat to human skin at a rate slow enough that a person walking briskly across it, and briskly is the operative word, will not sustain serious burns. This works. It has been demonstrated reliably. It requires a specific coal temperature, a specific depth of ash bed, a specific pace of walking, and crucially, preparation of the bed by someone who knows what they are doing. Curtis had watched 3 YouTube videos about firewalking. 2 of them were Tony Robbins compilations. One of them was a safety warning video that Curtis later told investigators he had not watched to completion because it was energy-depleting content. The coal bed Curtis prepared ran approximately 18 feet long, was approximately 6 inches too shallow in ash coverage, and had been assembled from construction waste lumber that contained treated wood components that burn at a fundamentally different temperature than untreated hardwood. Curtis had achieved a surface temperature, investigators later estimated, of approximately 400 degrees Fahrenheit. For reference, the standard firewalking coal bed targets around 600 degrees. The difference between 600 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit, thermodynamically speaking, is not a matter of degree. It is a matter of outcome. Curtis walked first to demonstrate confidence. He made it 4 feet. He was airlifted. 12 of the 41 participants sustained burns of varying severity before bystanders pulled people off the bed. The retreat ended on day 2. Curtis was subsequently charged with 31 counts of reckless endangerment and 4 counts of felony fraud. He was convicted on all counts. He did not deliver a closing motivational speech at sentencing, though one imagines he had considered it. Real talk, genuinely. If someone charges you $200 to walk on fire, ask who prepared the coals, what their training is, and what the surface temperature is. Those are not limiting beliefs. Those are thermodynamics. You are allowed to ask about thermodynamics before putting your feet on the 100-degree embers. That is the lesson. Back to it. Curtis transcended his limitations. He also transcended the skin on the bottom of his feet. The universe charged no additional seminar fee for that demonstration. We are now at the halfway point, and I want you to notice something. Every person so far was defeated by a factor they had specific information about and chose to ignore. Number 5 is different. Number 5 is the quietest story in this episode. Listen carefully. Number 5. A small town in rural Romania, 2020. Her name was Anna. She was 61 years old, a retired pharmacist, a grandmother of 4, and for approximately 14 months, the most trusted financial figure in her village. This was because Anna had discovered, through a cousin who had discovered it through a social media post, something called a mirror trading network. The network, according to its operators, mirrored the trades of elite European fund managers in real time, delivering consistent returns of between 7% and 11% per month to network members. Anna had invested her retirement savings for $23,000. She had received for the first 4 months her stated returns. She had then, and this is where the quietness comes in, begun recommending the network to her neighbors. She had recruited her sister's husband, the retired schoolteacher down the road, the man who fixed her roof in 2018, the young couple who had just had a baby and were trying to build savings. 11 people. Do 87,400 total, combined. Anna had not done this for commission. Anna had done this because she believed in it. She had watched the numbers go up. She had seen the monthly returns appear in her account. She was almost certainly thinking that she had found something real, something that was going to change things for people she loved, in a village where things were hard and money was tight and the options were limited. The network collapsed in the 5th month. Every account went to zero simultaneously, which is the signature of a coordinated exit by the operators. Anna's $23,000 was gone. The U-87-400 her neighbors had trusted her with was gone. Anna was not prosecuted. She had not profited. She had been as thoroughly deceived as everyone else. But she was the one who had to look at 11 faces. She was the one who had to explain it to the young couple with the baby. She lived the rest of her life in that village, with those 11 people, with the full weight of what she had not known she was doing. This is the story that doesn't make you laugh. This is the story that makes you understand why every other story in this episode matters. Anna didn't lose money. Anna lost something you can't put in a spreadsheet. The operators of the mirror trading network were identified 2 years later in Bulgaria. They had done this in 6 countries. None of them had ever met Anna. None of them knew her name. To them, she was a conversion rate in a dashboard. She was not a grandmother. She was not a pharmacist. She was a number in a column that had done its job and been moved to the closed file. I needed you to hear that one before we go back to the absurdity. Because the absurdity is funnier when you understand what's underneath it. Okay, we're back. Number 6 is why one of our researchers needed to lie down. Number 6, Miami, Florida, 2022. There is a man, we will call him Reef, because that is what his Instagram called him, and because his legal name, Trevor Bartholomew Osgood III, is somehow less plausible, who had built, through sheer force of personal presentation and a ring light, an Instagram following of 214,000 people. Reef was 26. Reef had good teeth. Reef was in chronological order a personal trainer, a dropshipping guru, an NFT advisor, a Forex signals provider, and by the time of this story, a crypto whale who had allegedly turned 5,000 into 2 to 3 million trading altcoins. He documented this journey extensively on Instagram. He had a Lamborghini in 11 posts. It was a rented Lamborghini. The rental company was tagged in 3 of the posts, which Reef appeared not to notice. Reef's product was called The Whale Academy. It was a private Discord server costing $497 per month, inside which Reef provided crypto trading signals, specific buy and sell instructions for specific coins at specific times. Members would act on these signals, and according to Reef's website, achieve returns of between 40% and 300% on individual trades. The website included 17 testimonials. Reef had written 14 of them himself using a voice he described in his own notes that were later seized as excited but credible. Here is the nature of crypto trading signals, because this is important to understand for reasons that will become completely obvious in approximately 60 seconds. When a signal provider with 214,000 followers tells 800 paying members to simultaneously buy a specific low liquidity altcoin, the collective buying pressure of 800 people acting on that signal can temporarily push the price of that coin upward. This creates the appearance of a successful signal. What it actually creates is a pump and dump structure, in which the signal provider, who has purchased the coin before issuing the signal, sells into the buying pressure created by his own followers. This is called market manipulation. It is illegal in regulated securities markets. Cryptocurrency regulation in 2022 was still catching up. Reef was aware of this. Reef thought this meant he was operating in a legal gray area. Reef was thinking of the wrong shade of gray. And it's genuinely insane. Reef had been doing this successfully for 9 months. He had collected once $4 million in subscription fees. He had generated an additional $880,000 in trading profits from the pump cycles. He was, by any measure, succeeding. And then he made the only decision that could have made any of this worse. He went on a podcast. The podcast was called Real Alpha Moves. It had 60,000 listeners. The host, a man named Patrick, asked Reef to explain his trading methodology in specific detail. Reef, who had excellent teeth and had never been asked a specific question before in his professional life, explained it in detail. On a recorded podcast, he described the signal timing. He described the pre-purchase. He described the exit strategy. He described the structure with the clarity and enthusiasm of someone who genuinely did not understand that he was confessing to federal wire fraud in front of 60,000 people, and, subsequently, a prosecutor who was a regular listener. The SEC and the DOJ simultaneous actions. The Discord server was shut down. The Lamborghini rental company issued a statement clarifying that they had no association with the enterprise. Reef was sentenced to 4 years and 3 months. His Instagram account was preserved as evidence and remains, at time of writing, publicly visible. The ring light is still in the background of every photo. It is still on. He explained the whole thing, on purpose, to 60,000 people, because someone asked. I'm gonna need a moment. Okay. Number 7 exists in a category of confidence so specific and so structural that it almost deserves its own taxonomy. These are the people who are not stupid about the scam. They are stupid about the exit. Number 7, Shenzhen, China, 2019. A man named Wei, 34, former export logistics coordinator, current operator of a remarkably sophisticated investment fraud, had been running a foreign exchange scheme for 22 months. The scheme was technically elaborate. Wei had built, with two partners, a fake brokerage platform that looked, with a precision that investigators later described as unsettling, exactly like a legitimate FX trading interface. It had real-time price feeds. It had a customer support chat. It had a compliance department that responded to emails within 4 business hours. The compliance department was Wei's cousin, Fang, who was 22, studying graphic design, and had been told it was a fintech startup. Fang was later granted immunity. Wei's platform targeted overseas Chinese investors primarily in Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Investors deposited real currency. The platform showed them fictional trades making fictional profits. When they tried to withdraw, the withdrawal process required a regulatory clearance fee of between 8% and 15% of the total account value. Investors who paid the fee were shown that their withdrawal was processing. It processed for approximately as long as it took Wei to decide he was done with that investor. Wei had collected the equivalent of $2 million USD over 22 months. Wei's plan for the exit was specific. He had, and this is documented, a Google Doc titled Exit Strategy that he had been updating for 8 months. The strategy involved transferring funds across 7 jurisdictions, establishing residency in a country without an extradition treaty with China, and disappearing into a comfortable retirement. The Google Doc was shared with his 2 partners. They had commenting access. They had left 31 comments. Wei had addressed all of them. This was, in its way, an extremely well-project, managed crime. The problem was the Google account. Wei used his personal Gmail. The Gmail was linked to his phone number. The phone number was registered to his real name. When Interpol requested account data from Google as part of an international fraud investigation, Google provided the document, the edit history, the IP log, and 14 months of associated emails, including several in which Wei and his partners discussed, in detail, which country had the most comfortable extradition immunity. They had researched 6 options. They had built a comparison matrix. The comparison matrix was in the Google Doc. It was entered into evidence at trial. Wei had ranked the options by lifestyle quality and legal distance from China. He had given each country a score out of 10. Malaysia had 1 with a 7-8. Wei was arrested in Malaysia. His lifestyle quality score for the country was, at that point, somewhat revised. He planned his exit on Google Docs and stored it in his Gmail. The only way this could have been more convenient for investigators is if he had CC'd them on the original. Number 8 is the most shocking story in this entire episode. I want you to be sitting down, not because of the danger, but because of the specific species of audacity involved. Number 8. Washington, D.C. 2021. There are certain federal buildings in which it is straightforwardly impossible to conduct a wire fraud scheme and survive undetected. This is not a matter of opinion. This is institutional architecture. The Financial Industry Regulatory Authority (FINRA) employs approximately 400 people whose specific professional function is to identify financial fraud. Their database contains records on every registered broker, dealer, and investment advisor in the United States. They have an enforcement division. They have forensic accountants. They have been doing this since 1939. A man named Dennis, 47, former registered investment advisor, suspended from the industry in 2016 for unsuitable investment recommendations, which is the regulatory community's way of saying he had lost a lot of other people's money through a combination of incompetence and self-interest, had upon his suspension started a new company. The company was called National Capital Wealth Partners LLC. It was not registered. It had no licenses. It had a website that cost $340 to build on Squarespace and used the word fiduciary 11 times on the homepage. Dennis knew what fiduciary meant. He knew that his company was not one. He used the word 11 times anyway, because he had found that it made retired people comfortable. Dennis had collected $9 million from 43 investors, most of them retirees in the greater Washington area, over 18 months. He had been investing precisely none of it. He had been, instead, spending it. FIRA's investigators identified his operation through a routine database sweep for unregistered investment advisors. They found him in 11 days. 11. They had been looking for him specifically for 0 of those days. They found him because their systems were designed to find him automatically, the way a drain is designed to collect water. Not through effort, not through investigation, but through fundamental structural inevitability. Dennis had specifically targeted the geographic area surrounding the single most dense concentration of financial regulators on Earth. He had called his company National Capital Wealth Partners, which put the word capital, as in the nation's capital, as in the city in which he was operating. as in the city in which FINRA, the SEC, the Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau all maintain offices directly in his company name. He had, in effect, labeled his fraud with the name of the people who were going to find it. He was sentenced to 7 years and 2 months. The Squarespace website was taken down. The 11 uses of fiduciary are no longer available for review. He set up a fraud operation inside the regulatory district of the United States federal government and named it after the place where it was located. This is the scammer equivalent of robbing a police station and writing, "Robbed by me, Dennis," on the wall on your way out. You heard me. Number 9 gave us something we did not expect. A case where the scammer was the most technically competent person in the room and it still made absolutely no difference at all. Number 9. Tel Aviv, Israel 2018. Binary options fraud was briefly a global industry. At its peak, Israeli binary options firms, many operating out of actual office buildings with actual employees and actual tech infrastructure, were defrauding investors worldwide of an estimated $1 billion annually. This was not amateur hour stuff. This was organized, scaled, and, for a specific window of time, operating in a legal space that regulators had not yet fully closed. A man named Yov, 31, computer science degree from the Technion, genuinely gifted software engineer, was head of technology at one of these firms. Yov's job was to build the platform. The platform allowed retail investors, mostly in North America and Western Europe, to bet on whether specific financial assets would be above or below a certain price at a specific future time. If correct, the investor received a payout of between 70% and 85% of their bet. If incorrect, they lost 100% of their bet. This asymmetry meant that the house, Yov's employer, had a structural mathematical advantage on every single trade, regardless of the investor's skill or analysis. But Yov had been asked to go further. Yov had been asked to build what the firm's internal documentation called a market adjustment module. The market adjustment module was a piece of software that, in the final seconds before a binary option expired, could add or subtract small fractions of a percent from the displayed asset price on the client-facing interface, enough to flip a winning trade to a losing trade without the client having any way to detect it. It was, in technical terms, extraordinarily sophisticated code. In legal terms, it was wire fraud with a graphical user interface. Yov built it. Yov knew what it was. Yov told himself he was an engineer, not an operator. He told himself this distinction mattered. The U.S. Department of Justice did not find the distinction as compelling as Yov did. When the firm was indicted, one of several coordinated actions that dismantled the Israeli binary options industry in 2019, Yov's code was the centerpiece of the prosecution. Not because he was the most senior person, not because he had profited most, but because he had left, embedded in the market adjustment module's code, detailed comments explaining exactly what it did and why. He had commented his own fraud, with precision, in English, as any good engineer does, to make the code maintainable. The DOJ's technical expert read those comments aloud during the trial. Yov received 4 years. The code was clean, readable, and thoroughly documented. His version control commits were time-stamped. His commit messages were professional and descriptive. Technically, it was excellent work. Legally, it was a signed confession in a programming language. He documented his crime better than most people document legitimate software. The prosecution said thank you, and now the final number 10. The Internet, everywhere, 2020. At the exact moment that a global pandemic had locked 3 billion people inside their homes with nothing but time and a phone and a growing anxiety about the future, the scam economy experienced what venture capitalists would call a significant market expansion event. Fraud went up. Romance scams went up. Fake investment platforms went up. And into this environment, this perfect, fertile, boundless field of human vulnerability, stepped a collective. Not one person, not two. A network of over 60 operators, spanning 7 countries, communicating primarily through Telegram, coordinating something they called, in their own internal messages, Operation Infinity. Operation Infinity was, on paper, the most sophisticated retail investment fraud ever attempted in terms of operational scale. It had a fake hedge fund, Meridian Global Capital, with a professionally designed website, a published investment prospectus that ran to 44 pages, a fictional team of executives with AI, generated photographs and fabricated LinkedIn profiles, and a fake auditing firm certifying their returns. They had, over 14 months, recruited 400 investors across the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, South Africa, Canada, India, and Germany. They had collected in aggregate 43.7 million. Their internal Telegram group had 64 members. The group was called IF Ganj. It was not a private channel. It was a group, 64 people, one of whom, participant number 40, won in the eventual indictment, a 23-year-old in Birmingham, England named Quaim, who handled the UK investor communications, had, in a moment of considerable professional miscalculation, added his actual personal phone number as the group contact for urgent UK queries. His personal phone number. In the group that 63 other scammers were also in. Quaim had been recruited into the operation via a friend and had not fully understood the operational security protocols, which, to be fair, had been explained to him in a Telegram message he had opened, seen, and swiped away. A UK investor who had lost their Zalzern, a retired nurse named Patricia, 63 years old, who had been saving that money for 11 years, called the number. Quaim answered. Patricia had a specific energy that anyone who has ever had a terrible customer service interaction will recognize: absolute calm, absolute clarity, and the quiet certainty of someone who has already decided how this is going to end. She asked for his name. He gave it. She asked for the company address. He gave a post office box. She asked why the post office box was in Birmingham if the fund was registered in the Cayman Islands. Quaim, who was not a good liar under pressure, gave 3 different answers in the same sentence. Patricia told Quaim she would be calling the Financial Conduct Authority. Quaim told her that was fine. Quaim then went to the IFY gang Telegram group and typed, and this is documented, just had a call from a Karen Goinivka. He included a laughing emoji. He included his own name in the follow-up message when someone asked who had called. The FCA received Patricia's complaint 40 minutes later. The Telegram group, including Quaim's real name in the conversation thread, was submitted as supporting evidence. 51 of the 64 operators were identified and charged across 7 jurisdictions. The Telegram group was the primary evidence in 43 of the 51 cases. The AI-generated executive photographs were identified by a technology journalist who wrote a 2,000-word piece on the fraud before the indictments were even filed. The 44-page prospectus contained a section on regulatory compliance that investigators later described as comprehensive, professionally written, and entirely fictional. Quaim received 3 years. Patricia received a full restitution order and a letter of commendation from the FCA. The laughing emoji was read aloud during sentencing. Operation Infinity ended because one 23-year-old answered a phone call and then told 63 co-conspirators what had happened, including his real name, in writing, in a group chat that law enforcement then read. 64 people. 14 months. $43.7 million. Ended by a retired nurse with a phone, 11 years of savings, and absolutely nothing left to lose. The universe does not always balance the books. But when it does, it is precise. Here is the question I am going to leave you with, and I want you to actually think about it before you answer in the comments. Every single person in this video, the Ponzi operator, the fiduciary fraudster, the podcast confessor, the Google Doc architect, at some point had a moment where they could have stopped. A moment where the voice in the back of their head said, "This is the part where it falls apart." And they kept going. The question is why? What is the specific thing, the psychology, the need, the story they told themselves that kept them moving forward past that moment? Because I think if you understand that, you understand something important about how these things happen. Tell me in the comments. I am genuinely asking. The best answer gets pinned. If any moment in this video made you feel that specific combination of horrified and entertained, the one where you laugh and then immediately feel slightly bad about laughing, hit the like button. That feeling is exactly what this channel is for. We have calibrated for it precisely. And if you subscribe because you find human overconfidence darkly fascinating and you wanted to see where it goes at full speed, welcome. You are in the right place. You have also, statistically, just demonstrated the exact curiosity that separates you from everyone in this video. Probably. We'll see.